All right, so today we are going to dive into something that I think a lot of us have thought about, and that's psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
But more specifically, we're going to unpack this fascinating chapter
Yeah.
on transtheoretical therapy from the Systems of Psychotherapy textbook.
It is a dense chapter for sure.
Yeah.
Lots of really good information in there, though.
Oh, it's packed.
Yeah.
What really sparked my interest in this was just the sheer number of therapy options out there.
Right.
It's like, how do you even know where to begin?
Right.
Like, what's the right fit?
Well, I think that's why you're really going to find this deep dive helpful, because the chapter starts off right away
Okay.
by acknowledging this very problem, and they even have a name for it. It's the dilemma of choice.
Oh, wow.
So with all these approaches, how do you choose? And, they make a great point. They say research hasn't really shown that any one therapy is the clear winner.
Right.
It's not like there's one miracle cure therapy out there.
Right. And that just makes it all the more confusing,
Yeah.
So it's not just about finding what's the most scientifically validated.
Right.
A lot of it depends on, personal preference or the therapist's training.
Yeah, and that's where I think things get really interesting, because the chapter introduces Perry's model of intellectual and ethical development,
Okay.
which can be really helpful in understanding, how people approach knowledge,
Okay.
particularly in a field like psychotherapy.
Okay. So Perry's model, lay it on me.
So imagine it like this. Like at the most basic level, some people, they just see things in black and white. It's right or wrong, They might think my doctor's always right.
Okay.
Or this one type of therapy is the only way.
Right.
And that's what's called the dualistic stage.
So it's like there's just one right answer and anything else is just wrong.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then you move to a stage where you acknowledge that there are different opinions and different truths out there.
Uh-huh.
But maybe we haven't found the ultimate answer yet, right? Like which scientific theory is going to, win out in the end?
That's the multiplistic stage.
Okay. I can see how that would apply to, choosing a therapy.
Yeah.
Because there are all these different approaches.
Yeah.
And they all kind of claim to have the best, way of doing things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it gets even more complex when you realize that actually all perspectives have some value.
Mm-hmm.
And what's true really depends on the context, right?
Yeah.
That's the relativistic stage.
I can see how that gets very confusing.
It can be overwhelming, yeah.
Yeah, because suddenly there's no right answer,
Right.
And that's kind of where I feel stuck a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like, how do I even make a decision if everybody's got a different opinion?
Well, and that's where that final stage comes in. It's called committed.
Okay.
And this is where you recognize that there are multiple valid perspectives.
Okay.
But you make an informed and ethical choice based on your understanding and the specific situation.
Okay.
So you can think of, a therapist who refers you to a colleague if their approach isn't the best fit for you. So it's about navigating those gray areas and making a choice based on what seems to be most appropriate in a given moment. Yeah.
And I think what this model helps explain is why certain therapists gravitate toward particular approaches.
Right.
And why we, as clients, might feel drawn to one type of therapy over another.
Right.
And it's all kind of tied to our understanding of knowledge and how we view truth.
This is making so much sense. This is great.
Good.
Okay, but wait. There's another model too, right?
There is, yeah.
Werner's model.
Werner's model. And I think this one builds upon Perry's model.
Okay.
Because it looks at how we integrate knowledge.
Okay.
Which, again, I think is so crucial in a field as multifaceted as psychotherapy.
All right, so tell me about Werner's model.
Okay, so imagine somebody saying, all politicians are the same, right?
Uh-huh.
They're not really seeing the nuances between, different individuals or parties or anything like that. And that's kind of like the first stage of Werner's model.
Okay.
It's called the global whole. Okay.
Where everything is just kind of lumped together.
Okay, so in therapy, that would be like saying all therapy is just therapy.
Exactly.
Right. There's no difference between CBT and psychoanalysis.
Right. There's no distinction.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite problem, right? Where you get so caught up in the differences that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, obsessing over comparing, different car models without considering like what you actually need the car for.
It's like getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the goal, of course, is to reach the integration stage where you can see both the similarities and the differences, right?
So you can see the whole forest and the trees.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that's really what this chapter on Transtheoretical Therapy, or TTM, is all about.
So TTM is kind of like the ultimate integrator.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
It's like it goes beyond just saying all therapies have value, and it tries to actually figure out what makes them effective, regardless of the approach.
Regardless of the approach.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And what are the core kind of components of TTM?
So the chapter breaks it down into 3 core dimensions, and those are the processes of change,
Right.
stages of change, and levels of change.
Okay.
So kind of a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, let's start with the processes of change.
Okay.
What are those?
Well, think of those as the actions, both internal and external, that people take to create change.
Yeah.
And the chapter identifies 10 research-supported processes of change.
10.
10, yeah.
Okay.
There are a lot.
Are there any that really stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is consciousness raising,
Okay.
and that's about becoming aware of the problem, right? So like suddenly realizing how much your unhealthy eating habits are affecting your energy levels.
So that's that aha moment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's dramatic relief.
Okay.
You know, you can think of like a really powerful movie scene that evokes a really strong emotional response in you, and then it motivates you to make a change in your own life.
Okay.
Kind of that emotional breakthrough.
Right. Yeah, those can be really powerful.
Yeah, they can be.
And then there's one called self-liberation.
Yes.
That sounds kind of empowering.
It is, and it's really about believing in your own ability to change.
Okay.
That I can do this feeling.
Uh-huh.
And what I think is really interesting about TTM is that it recognizes that people use multiple processes,
Okay.
not just 1 or 2, right?
So it's like a blend of these processes that people use.
Yeah, it's kind of a personalized blend.
Not a one-size-fits-all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes TTM so versatile.
Okay.
It acknowledges that, you know, change is complex, and we draw on various tools along the way.
All right, so we've got processes down.
Okay.
What about those stages of change you mentioned?
Okay, so stages of change recognize that personal growth happens over time, right?
Oh.
And people move through distinct stages on this journey, and there's 6 of them.
Oh my gosh.
6, yeah.
Okay.
Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and termination.
6 stages.
Yeah.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
So I don't get lost.
All right. So imagine somebody who just got diagnosed with high blood pressure, but they're still eating tons of salt.
Okay.
They're in pre-contemplation.
So they're not even thinking about changing.
They're not even thinking about it.
Oh.
Then there's contemplation.
Okay.
So now they're starting to think about maybe cutting back on the salt,
Okay.
but they haven't really committed to doing it yet.
So it's like I know I should, but I'm not going to do it yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
I've been there many a time.
I think we all have, yeah.
Okay, what about preparation?
Okay, so preparation is when they're getting ready to act.
Okay.
So maybe they buy a cookbook with low-sodium recipes.
Okay.
Or they start reading labels at the grocery store.
So they're taking little steps.
Right, they're making little changes.
But not fully diving in.
Not fully diving in yet, no.
Okay, and then action is when they're actually doing it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So now they're cooking those healthy meals.
Okay.
And they're avoiding those salty snacks.
Okay.
And then maintenance is all about keeping up those good habits long term.
Okay.
So, you know, resisting the temptation to order that super salty takeout, for example.
It's like making it part of your lifestyle now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then termination is that ideal stage, right?
That's like the promised land.
It is. It's where the old behavior is just no longer even tempting.
Right.
You know, they've fully integrated those healthy eating habits,
Right.
and they don't even crave that excess salt anymore.
That sounds awesome, but realistically,
Yeah.
do people reach that termination stage?
Well, it depends, right? And I think the chapter even talks about a spiral model of change.
Okay.
To acknowledge that people often cycle through these stages multiple times.
Okay.
You know, relapse is normal. It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about learning and growing with each attempt.
That's a much more, I guess, realistic
Yeah.
and healthy way of looking at it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've done processes, we've done stages.
Mm-hmm.
What about that third dimension, the levels of change?
Okay. So the levels of change recognize that problems can exist at different levels, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like layers of an onion. And the most surface level is symptoms/situational,
Okay.
like feeling anxious because of a big presentation at work.
So that's very much tied to a specific event or circumstance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then you have maladaptive cognitions, which are those negative thought patterns that
Okay.
can kind of fuel the problem, right?
So like thinking, I'm going to mess this up.
Right.
And then you get more anxious because you're thinking that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we have current interpersonal conflicts.
Okay.
So those are issues within relationships. So for example, maybe the anxiety about that presentation stems from a conflict with a coworker.
Right. Okay, so you've got that dynamic
Yeah,
in the relationship that's adding to the issue.
exactly. And then we go even deeper and we get to family/systems conflicts.
Okay.
This is where, those dysfunctional family dynamics that we learn in childhood
Right.
really start to play out in our adult lives.
So maybe that person, they learn to avoid conflict as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now they feel paralyzed whenever there's a disagreement at work.
Exactly. It's about recognizing how those early experiences shape our current patterns.
Oh, wow. This is heavy.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And then finally, at the deepest level, we have intrapersonal conflicts.
Okay.
And those are those deep-seated psychological issues, like trauma
Okay.
or deeply ingrained low self-worth.
Wow. So it really is like a journey from those very surface level symptoms
Yeah.
down to like those really core wounds.
Exactly.
It's wild.
It is, and TTM acknowledges this complexity, right? So treatment might start by addressing those symptoms,
Okay.
and then, if needed, go deeper to explore those underlying issues.
This is so insightful. Oh my gosh.
Good, good.
It's like we're really starting to see the bigger picture
Mm-hmm.
of how change works.
Yeah, and how all of these pieces fit together.
Yeah, but how does that play out in therapy, though?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean that a therapist is going to switch between different styles depending on what stage and level you're at?
And I think that's where the real magic of PTM comes in.
Okay.
It's not about rigidly sticking to one school of thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's about using the tools that are most effective at that particular point
Oh, wow.
in the client's journey.
So it's like having a therapist who is fluent in multiple, like, therapy languages.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, and they can speak whichever one makes the most sense
Exactly. Yeah.
for you at that time.
Yeah, it's about being adaptable, and it's
Yeah.
about drawing from different approaches
Yeah.
to meet the client's unique needs.
This is amazing. My mind is blown.
Good.
But how do you bridge the gap between theory and practice?
Yeah.
Like, how do these concepts, result in tangible action?
Well, and that's where those processes of change we were talking about earlier really come into play.
Okay.
Remember those 10 processes? They're not just abstract concepts.
Right.
They're actionable steps that we can use both within therapy
Okay.
and in our everyday lives.
Right. Okay. We talked about consciousness raising, dramatic relief,
Mm-hmm.
and self-liberation.
Yeah.
What about the other 7?
So there's environmental reevaluation.
Yeah.
And this is about thinking about how your physical surroundings or the people you spend time with impact your behaviors.
Yeah,
So maybe you realize you're more likely to overeat
Okay.
when you're hanging out with friends who have unhealthy eating habits.
So it's about looking at your environment and whether it's helping or hurting.
Yeah, exactly. Are they supporting or sabotaging your goals?
Yeah. Okay.
Then there's self-reevaluation, which is really about looking inward. What are your values? What do you truly want in life?
Okay.
And how do your current behaviors align with those values?
So it's like checking your compass and making sure you're going in the right direction.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then we have social liberation.
Okay.
And you can think about this as finding communities and support systems that
Mm.
align with your goals, right?
Okay.
So if you're trying to be more active, maybe you join a hiking group,
Right.
or you connect with people who share your passion for healthy cooking, for example.
Right. It's like recognizing that change is easier if you've got people helping you.
Yeah, having that support network.
Yeah.
And then we have the more, I guess you could say, behavioral processes,
Right.
like counter conditioning,
Okay.
where you're essentially replacing unhealthy behaviors with healthier alternatives.
So like instead of reaching for that bag of chips when you're stressed, you go for a walk.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's stimulus control.
Okay.
And this is all about managing your environment to minimize those triggers and temptations, right?
So like if you're trying to quit sugar, you don't keep cookies in the house.
Exactly.
Okay.
Get those tempting things out of sight.
Right. Right.
Don't walk past the bakery on your way home from work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Setting yourself up for success.
I love these practical tips.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was that last one?
Contingency management.
Okay.
And this one's all about setting up a system of rewards
Okay.
and consequences to reinforce those positive behaviors.
So like rewarding yourself with, I don't know, a new video game after a week of working out or something.
Yeah, or donating to a cause that you dislike every time you doll up.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's about creating that external motivation
Okay.
and accountability.
So these 10 processes give us a framework for making change to actually happen.
Yeah, I think that's the idea.
Okay, but how do you know which one to use when?
Right. Well, and that's the beauty of TTM, right?
Okay.
It kind of provides this roadmap for matching the right processes to the right stage.
Okay, this is like a cheat sheet to life.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, it's like a cheat sheet for navigating change effectively.
Let's dive into some examples because I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
how does this work?
Okay, so let's start with someone who's in that pre-contemplation stage, right?
Okay.
They're not even thinking about change yet.
Right.
And so the key here, I think, is to gently nudge them toward awareness,
Okay.
not force them to take action.
So instead of bombarding them with all the reasons why they should change, you're kind of just planting seeds.
Yeah, planting seeds of curiosity.
Yeah.
Help them explore the potential benefits.
Okay.
So processes like consciousness raising and dramatic relief can be really powerful here.
So like helping them see it from a new angle.
Yeah, maybe through education or feedback or even,
Yeah.
Emotional storytelling.
It's about sparking that little flicker
Exactly.
of recognition.
Yeah, that, maybe there's something here I need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And then as they move into contemplation where they're starting to consider change, but they haven't committed. Right. Processes like self-reevaluation and environmental reevaluation become more important.
So you're helping them weigh the pros and cons and look at, their values and how their environment might be influencing their decisions.
Yeah, it's about supporting that decision-making process,
Okay.
helping them envision a different future,
Okay.
and building their confidence.
So change isn't just about willpower
No.
or taking action, but it's about creating the right conditions for growth.
Yeah, that's key.
Both internal and external.
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then as they transition into the preparation stage, they're getting ready to act.
They're getting ready. And so now processes like self-liberation and social liberation become really crucial.
Okay, so it's about fostering their belief in themselves.
Yeah.
And helping them connect with supportive people
Exactly.
to help them along the way.
Yep. And building their commitment
Okay.
to the journey ahead.
This is very empowering.
It is, yeah.
It's not about fixing problems. It's about
Correct.
like stepping into your power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, action.
Action, that's when they're actively making the changes.
Okay.
And so this is where those more behavioral processes like counterconditioning, stimulus control, and contingency management become really important.
So now it's about like, breaking those old patterns, managing your triggers, and really reinforcing those new healthy behaviors.
Exactly.
So you've got a whole arsenal of tools now to support the actions.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
That's so cool. And then in maintenance, it's all about preventing relapse, right?
Sustaining those changes, preventing relapse.
And making them part of your life. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and throughout this whole process, right, the therapist's role is to guide, support, and empower the individual,
Okay.
really adapting their approach based on the client's needs at each stage.
This is so insightful. This is great.
Good, good.
It's like having a detailed map,
Yeah.
It's like you understand the terrain. You know what to expect.
Yeah, and what tools to use at each step of the way.
Yeah, and it's not about fixing what's broken, but unlocking that potential
Yeah, exactly.
for growth
Yeah.
and healing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
This is great. But we've covered a lot already.
We have.
Is there anything else we need to explore?
Well, I think we can't forget about those levels of change we were talking about,
Okay.
right? It's about recognizing that problems can manifest at different levels.
Right. So we talked about symptoms / situational, maladaptive cognitions, interpersonal conflicts, family / system conflicts, and then those deep intrapersonal conflicts.
Right. And TTM provides a framework for assessing those different levels.
Okay.
And choosing interventions that address the root cause, not just the symptoms.
So it's like peeling back those layers of the onion.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay.
To understand the underlying dynamics.
And is it always about going deep?
I don't think it is, no.
Okay.
Sometimes addressing the symptom level
Right.
can be enough to create significant change.
So like if somebody's just having trouble sleeping because of work stress, maybe they just need some stress management techniques.
Yeah, exactly.
But if there are, deeper issues, like maybe they're having, marital problems or they've gained some unresolved trauma from the past, then you've got to
Then you got to go
address those issues as well. I love that TTM encourages that,
Yeah.
more holistic perspective.
Yeah.
It's like you're not just this collection of symptoms,
Right.
you're this complex being.
Yeah, with all these different levels.
Yeah, okay.
Interconnected levels.
This is so cool.
Good.
I'm really enjoying this.
I'm glad.
It's so helpful.
Good.
I feel like this has really given me a whole new appreciation for the complexity of change.
Yeah.
It's not just about like willpower or finding the right therapy, but it's about, understanding yourself and your patterns, and what you need to,
what tools you need.
Yeah, to navigate this whole crazy journey.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. It is a journey,
Okay.
right? It's not a destination.
Right.
And while I've been talking about psychotherapy today,
Uh-huh.
I think the principles of TTM can really be applied to any area of life.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So like improving your health or your relationships or just breaking a bad habit.
Any area where you're seeking to create some positive change.
Wow, this is such a good takeaway.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing, though,
Yeah.
is change is a process, not an event,
Yes.
I
love that.
It's a journey,
Yeah.
There are going to be ups and downs, challenges, triumphs. You got to embrace the journey.
Yes.
Recognize that there's no quick fix.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
And just learn from every step along the way.
I love that.
So it's not about being perfect, but just persistent, compassionate, and just committed to evolving.
I love that. Yeah.
As a person.
And I would add to that.
Yeah.
I think it's about recognizing the power that we all have within us to create positive change, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to be victims of our circumstances.
Right.
We can be active agents in shaping our own lives.
Wow, that's a really good message.
Yeah.
It's like we're all change agents.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, and this deep dive was just, for me,
It was, yeah.
but what resonates most with you?
Yeah. What are you taking away from this?
Yeah, what are you taking away?
Yeah.
What insight?
The aha moments.
Yeah, leave us a comment below and let us know.
Yeah, let's continue the conversation.
Because ultimately, understanding change is about understanding ourselves.
I think so.
It's about recognizing our patterns, harnessing our strengths, and embracing that transformative power of the human spirit.
Beautifully said.
We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have, yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us, and until next time,
Yes.
keep exploring,
Keep learning.
and keep changing for the better.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Bye. Talking about these levels of change, I keep thinking about that case study from the chapter, Mrs. C.
Yeah.
Her story. It just really brings all these concepts to life,
Oh, yeah, Mrs. C, she was dealing with a lot, like severe OCD, hoarding disorder, depression, and some pretty serious family issues.
Yeah, and it's a really powerful example, I think, of how problems can manifest at those multiple levels, right?
Okay.
So you could see the symptoms and those situational triggers in her compulsive hand washing, but it went so much deeper than that.
Okay.
She had those negative thought patterns.
Right, those maladaptive cognitions.
Exactly, yeah, about contamination and germs.
And her family dynamics played a pretty big role, too, if I remember correctly.
A huge role, yeah, absolutely. There were conflicts within her marriage and then a lot of unresolved issues stemming from her childhood.
Okay.
Which really point to those family system and interpersonal levels of conflict.
So her case really spanned that whole hierarchy we were talking about.
It did, yeah.
Wow, so how did the therapists even begin to address all of that?
Yeah, well, and that's what's so fascinating about this case.
Okay.
They used what's called a maximum impact strategy.
Okay.
Meaning they intervened at each of those levels simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't about picking one therapy or focusing on just one area, but it was recognizing that everything was interconnected.
Okay, so it's like a multi-pronged approach.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Attacking the problem from all sides.
Yes. Yeah. So, for example, to manage her compulsive hand washing, they use stimulus control and counter conditioning at the symptom level.
Okay, remind me how those work again.
Sure. So stimulus control, it's about managing your environment to reduce triggers.
Okay.
So in Mrs. C's case, they had her sign a log before and after washing her hands, which created this delay that allowed for intervention.
So instead of just immediately giving in to the compulsion,
Right.
she had a moment to pause.
Exactly. And during those moments, that's when they would use counter-conditioning techniques.
Okay.
Like encouraging her to practice relaxation or even just talking to her about her anxiety.
So you're replacing that automatic unhealthy response with healthier coping mechanisms.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that they were working with her, like,
Yeah.
to break that pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about talking about her feelings, but actually giving her tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To manage those compulsions.
Manage it, yeah.
And then at the deeper levels, they use something called implosive therapy to address her anxieties and conflicts.
Implosive therapy. Okay, remind me what that one is.
Okay, so it's a form of exposure therapy where the client confronts their fears head on, but in a safe and controlled environment, right?
Okay.
So in Mrs. C's case, they created these scenes that triggered her anxiety.
Okay.
Like things involving dirt and disease and even, challenging those family dynamics.
So instead of avoiding the trigger,
Right.
you're facing it head on.
You're facing it head on.
In a safe space.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is that by repeatedly confronting these fears in a safe space, the anxiety will eventually lessen.
Oh, okay.
So it's like you're desensitizing yourself
Yeah.
to those triggers,
Yeah,
You're taking back your power.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What about her family? Like, how do they factor into all this?
Yeah, that's actually a crucial part of her story because they recognize that Mrs. C's problems weren't hers alone, right?
Right.
They were intertwined with those family dynamics.
Right.
So they actually incorporated family therapy sessions to address those family system conflicts.
Okay, so it's about acknowledging that the family system as a whole contributes to and is impacted by,
Yes.
Whatever's going on with the individual.
100%. It's a much broader perspective.
Yeah.
And through those family sessions, they uncovered some of the underlying issues that were feeding Mrs. C's anxieties.
Okay.
Like, for example, her mother's very strict rules about cleanliness and her father's controlling behavior.
So sometimes our present-day struggles are rooted in,
Yeah, our past experiences.
valley stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by bringing these hidden dynamics to light, they could start to shift those patterns
Okay.
and create a more supportive and healing environment for everyone.
It sounds very holistic, like everyone's connected.
It was very much a systems approach.
Yeah. Okay, but what about the outcome? Like, did all of this lead to lasting change for her?
It seems like it did, yeah. The chapter describes some pretty remarkable improvements. Her compulsive behaviors decreased significantly. Her hoarding lessened.
Yeah.
And she even rediscovered intimacy with her husband.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, suggesting progress on multiple levels.
That's really encouraging to hear, because it's like, even with these, really complex, multi-layered issues, change is possible.
Change is possible. And I think it also reinforces the idea that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right?
Right.
Each individual's journey is unique.
Right.
And it requires that personalized approach.
Wow. Her story really brings all this together, and I can really see how powerful TPM is.
Yeah, it's not just theory.
Yeah.
It can really help people make these real and lasting changes.
Yeah. And it's not just for therapists, right?
No, not at all.
Like, we can all apply these principles to our own lives,
I think so.
whether we're, working on our own personal growth or supporting someone else.
Absolutely. I think the beauty of this model is its universality.
Yeah.
It speaks to that shared human experience of wanting to grow and evolve.
As we're talking about this,
yeah.
like, TTM almost reframes your whole perspective on change. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers.
Right.
It's about understanding the process.
Yeah.
Being kind to yourself along the way. Recognizing that setbacks are normal.
Yes, 100%.
It's part of the journey.
It's part of the process, yeah.
I love that. It's like shifting from judgment to curiosity.
Yes, I love
And compassion.
Compassion, yeah.
And it's about empowering yourself to be an active participant rather than like a passive recipient of therapy.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah.
We all have that capacity to create positive change, and then TTM gives us those tools.
This is great. This whole conversation has been so enlightening.
Good, I'm glad.
I'm already thinking of how I can use this in my own life
Awesome.
and in my work and everything.
I love that.
I'm so conscious of the time, though.
Yeah, me too.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else from this chapter that, like, stood out to you?
There's one concept that I think deserves a little more attention.
Okay.
And it's the idea of the transtheoretical relationship. So it's about the dynamic between the therapist and the client
Okay.
and how that relationship can support change.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, so TTM suggests that the therapist's role should be flexible, adapting to the client's needs at each stage of change.
Okay.
So think of it like this. For someone in the pre-contemplation stage, the therapist might take on a more nurturing, supportive role.
Yeah.
Almost like a parent gently encouraging their child to try something new.
So you're not pushing them before they're ready,
Right.
but you're creating that safe space.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And then as the client moves into contemplation, the therapist might become more of a Socratic teacher, right?
Oh,
Asking those thought-provoking questions
yeah.
to help the client weigh the pros and cons.
Oh, guiding them through their thought process.
Exactly, yeah.
Rather than saying, you should do this.
Right, it's not about imposing your own advice or judgments.
Yeah.
And then as the client transitions into the action stage, the therapist might become more of a coach, providing encouragement and accountability and practical strategies.
So like being their cheerleader.
Yeah, exactly. Helping them stay motivated and on track.
Yeah.
And then in the maintenance stage, the therapist becomes more of a consultant.
Okay.
Helping the client anticipate challenges, develop coping mechanisms, stay focused on those long-term goals.
Like a trusted advisor.
Exactly, yeah.
To help you through those, bumps in the road.
Yeah, those inevitable ups and downs of the change process.
That's a great way to put it. It's like the relationship itself is a catalyst for change.
Yeah, and it highlights the importance, I think, of finding a therapist who not only has expertise in different approaches, but also can adapt their style to meet your unique needs.
So you need to find someone who can meet you where you're at.
Exactly.
And kind of walk alongside you.
Yeah, and that's what makes TTM so powerful, right?
Okay.
It's not just this theoretical framework. It's a very compassionate and individualized approach to supporting people through this often very challenging but ultimately rewarding process of change.
This whole conversation has been, I don't even know.
Yeah.
So eye-opening.
Good.
I love it.
I'm glad.
I'm already seeing how I can use this in my own life and with, the people around me.
I love that. And remember, this deep dive was tailored specifically for you.
Right.
But the conversation it doesn't have to end here.
Right.
So what are some of those insights that really resonated with you?
Yeah. What are you taking away from this? What insights?
Yeah. What aha moments?
What aha moments did you have? Let us know in the comments.
Let us know. Yeah.
And continue the conversation with us.
Yeah, because I think ultimately understanding change is about understanding ourselves.
Yeah. Recognizing our patterns, our strengths, and embracing that power.
Yeah.
Yeah. The transformative power of the human spirit.
Beautifully said.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
But thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
And until next time.
Yeah.
Keep exploring.
Keep learning.
Keep learning. Keep changing for the better.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Bye.
So we've really dug deep into transtheoretical therapy.
We have.
All those stages and processes of change.
Yeah.
The levels where problems can kind of hide.
Uh-huh.
We even went into Mrs. C's story.
Yeah.
And saw how TTM played out in like a real life situation.
Yeah, it was a great example.
But you mentioned some critiques of the model.
I did.
What are some of the limitations?
Yeah, so I think it's important to remember that TTM, like any model, is really just a simplification of a very complex reality.
So it's a good map.
Yeah.
But doesn't perfectly represent the terrain.
Exactly. And one of the main criticisms is that TTM can be seen as too linear.
Okay.
Or stage-based.
Right, because we were talking about that spiral model and how people kind of go back and forth.
Exactly. Yeah, change is often a lot more messy and cyclical than the model suggests.
Right, it's not always a straight line.
No, it's not.
Okay, gotcha.
And then some critics also argue that TTM doesn't really adequately account for the role of social and cultural factors in shaping behavior change.
So like things like systemic inequalities.
Yeah, or cultural norms that might influence someone's ability to make or maintain changes.
Right, so those aren't always explicitly addressed.
Right, they're not always front and center.
Gotcha.
Which can be a limitation.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We always need to consider the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another critique is that TTM can sometimes feel overly technical or formulaic.
Right.
And some argue that it risks reducing the richness of human experience to just a set of stages and processes.
It's like putting people in boxes.
Right, and it's important to remember that these models are tools to guide us.
Right.
Not rigid rules to follow.
They're not the be-all, end-all.
Exactly. That human element, the therapeutic relationship, the individual's unique journey, those are all essential factors that you can't really fully capture in a model.
It's like a reminder to use these models thoughtfully.
Yes.
Flexibly.
Yeah, like a grain of salt.
Yeah, with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Really prioritizing the person,
person.
their needs and their experiences.
Absolutely.
But even with those limitations,
yeah,
I think this has been a super valuable framework
I'd agree.
for understanding change.
Yeah. It's given us a lot to think about today.
It really has.
All those stages.
Yeah.
Processes.
The 10 processes.
10 processes, yeah.
The different levels.
The levels. Mm-hmm.
My perspective has definitely shifted.
Good. I'm glad.
I'm already thinking about how I can apply this to my own life, to my work.
That's great.
And this deep dive was tailored just for me. But what about everyone else?
Yeah. What about everyone listening?
What are you taking away from this?
What resonated with you the most?
What insights?
Yeah.
What aha moments?
What aha moments did you have?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Continue this conversation with us.
Because ultimately, understanding change is about understanding ourselves.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Recognizing our patterns, harnessing our strengths, and embracing that transformative power
Yes.
of the human spirit.
Beautifully said. I love that.
It's been a really rich deep dive.
It has.
But thank you so much for joining us. And until next time,
Yes.
keep exploring, keep learning, and keep changing for the better.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Oh, yeah.